Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be taking this thin client from HP and turning it into an awesome retro gaming So what is a thin client? Thin clients have been around for quite a while now, and basically they are just today's modern terminals. You plug a monitor and a keyboard and a network into it, and then you can remote into a server that exists in a data center or in the cloud. You'll see these used a lot of times as kiosks, as point of sale systems. Anytime you go to a store and there are computers there, more than likely they're one of these things. This gives IT departments control over the servers, over the environment, and these systems here run some proprietary operating system that is typically not as prone to being infected by viruses, can be very secure. It's basically just an easy way to get people a Windows desktop or a Linux desktop without the fuss of having an actual PC. However, more recently, thin clients have actually turned into full-fledged PCs like this one. So let's take a look at the specs of this guy, and then we'll take a look at how it's supposed to be used before we turn it into an awesome retro gaming console. Alright, so let's take a quick look at the specs of this thin client. So this is the T420. If we look at the product details, you can see that they optionally came with Windows Embedded, or either HP Thin Pro or HP Smart Zero Core. I believe the ones I have are running Thin Pro, but for our use today, it doesn't much matter what it's running because we'll be replacing that. You can see the processor is an AMD 1 GHz dual core APU with a discrete level GPU. That's good for us. That's going to give us the performance we need to emulate these older systems. It's got 2 GB of DDR3 RAM, which is more than enough again for what we need. And then storage, so they could come with 8 or 16. The ones that I've opened so far have come with 8. It's a little unfortunate, so we'll need to replace that, but that's not going to be a big deal. It's got USB, video, DVI, VGA, audio, network. Some of them, it looks like, actually came with a Wi-Fi adapter as well. Once we get it open, I'll show you where that would be if yours happens to have it. Mine, unfortunately, do not, so I have to use wired Ethernet. Alright, so I've got my thin client here, the HP T420. And connected to it, I have a VGA, I have a super tiny little mini keyboard, a wireless mouse, a power cord, and a network cable. So I have that connected to this Vizio monitor right here. So I've got a couple of my servers here. I have my Hyper-V server, and I have a Windows 2003 server running as a VM on the Hyper-V server. So I've actually already connected to the Hyper-V here. But if we go in and look at the connection manager, you can see that we can add in or delete any of these different servers that are on here. So this would be connecting to, a corporate point of sale system or a corporate Windows desktop. This would be used for connecting to a server like this. So now I am on my server that's in the server room, and I can use it just like I'm at the server itself. So basically, it's got a virtual desktop that's being routed to the thin client. The thin client handles displaying the graphics and taking the keyboard and mouse input, and it's all done across the network. All right, well, now that we know what a thin client does, let's get to the fun part of taking this boring business machine and turning it into an awesome retro gaming console. All right, so like I mentioned, I got these from Facebook Marketplace. The ones I found were $10 each. T420, they're out there, they're available. Just looking at eBay, you can definitely see that they are out there. Some people are asking probably way too much for them. But there's one here for $3.40 plus $15 shipping. When you look at this one, it says that it does not include a hard drive, but tested for key functions, ready for resale. I presume that the hard drive it doesn't have is the drive that we would be replacing with a larger drive anyway, so no problem there. The only thing is this one does not have the required AC adapter, which is 19.5 volts. So it's a pretty standard voltage. A lot of laptops are using 19.5 volts. So they're out there. If you wanted to do this project, I mean, here's 10 for 165 bucks. So that's what, 16 bucks each. Here are 6 for $36. And maybe something's wrong with these. I don't know. I'm not clicking into them, but they're out there. Don't spend $100 on them. All right, so now we're on to the point where we'll be building up a USB drive to take Linux that we will be using to boot up the Thin Client. So I've tried a couple different of the distros out there that are retro gaming focused, Arch Linux, and there are some other ones as well. But what I found works best with the T420s is this Batocera Linux. So Batocera is available for a ton of different hardware that comes out there. So Steam Deck, Raspberry Pi, a bunch of these, cheap Chinese different systems. So this might come with, 150 games on it or something, but we can replace that with Batocera Linux and have it run all these different emulators. So you might be fooled by thinking that this is the one we're going to be using: desktop PC, laptop, Nook, and Intel-based Apple computers, but that is actually not the one we want. If we scroll all the way down here to the bottom of their page, they have a section for what they call very old PCs, 20 plus years old. Well, this machine's not 20 plus years old, but what they mean is 32-bit processors. So old desktop laptop with a 32-bit CPU, that's the one we need. So we'll hit download here. And then once that's done downloading, we'll move on to the next step. All right, and then to get this written to our USB drive, we're going to be using Balena Etcher. So Balena Etcher, it can take these tarball images from the download that we just got for Batocera and write it to a flash drive. So we'll go ahead and download Etcher. And then we want to download whichever version of Etcher matches our system. So I'm running here on Windows 64-bit, so I can use either the portable or the installer. The installer obviously will install the utility to your system, and the portable will just run and exist in your downloads folder. So let's go ahead and download the portable one. All right, so this is the Balena Etcher interface. Now I'm going to take my USB drive. The tarball expands to about 9 gigabytes. So if you have a T420 that has an 8 gigabyte USB drive in it, then you need to replace that. I've got some cheapo Memorex 16 gigabit drives lying around, so I'm going to use one of those. So I'll plug it into my computer. And I want to flash from file. So I will select my file that I just downloaded. I will select the target. So that's my Memorex drive. And then I will hit flash. So I found this takes a little bit of time to run. As you can see here, it is going to extract to a 9.13 gigabyte file, and it's going to take it somewhere between 12 and 30 minutes. Looks like it's settled to 18, 17, 12, 13. We'll just let it run, and when it's finished, we'll come back and pick up. And we're done. So that was pretty simple. Plug in the USB drive, select the image, select the drive, and off it goes. So now we can take this USB drive, and let's go over to the Thin Client that's running back here and make this corporate BS stuff go away and replace it with vintage games. All right, so now comes the part where we install the drive we just made into the Thin Client. So let's go ahead and turn it off. It's got shutdown functionality built into the OS, or just hold the button for 5 seconds. Doesn't matter since we're not going to be using that OS again. So now we need to unplug all of our cords from the back. And we'll spin it around here. So you can see that there are 2 screws here and here. We need to take both of those out. All right, and with the screws out, you just kind of push the top back, and that opens right up to show you the system board. So this one's a little dusty, but no worries. So here are the main components. We've got our APU here under this heatsink. We've got our battery for the clock. Here is the slot where the Wi-Fi card would go. And here is the boot drive. So now what's interesting about this boot drive is that it's just a standard USB drive with no case on it. So all we need to do is pop that guy out, and there are tabs here that are holding it in. So I think we lift this tab here up, and then we slide the whole thing towards the back of the case, or up in this case. And with that released, we should be able to pull this drive out. All right. So here is the 8 GB drive that was in there. Nothing special. So if you wanted to reuse this for something else, you certainly can. If you have a model that's got the 16 gig drive, then you can actually just take this out and do all the previous steps on the drive that came with it. But we didn't. We had an 8 gig bottle, so let's set that to the side. And then we will take our drive that we put the new operating system on and just plug that right in. All right, so unfortunately, with this black plastic on here, our drive isn't going to fit, so we just need to remove it. Just lift it straight up, take it off. We don't need that. And now we can just plug our drive in, hopefully. And there we go. So it fits in really nicely, and that's it. So we took the factory drive out that had the Thin OS on it. We put our Batocera Linux drive in, and now we're ready to boot it up. So let's go ahead and plug all of our cables back in. All right, so it's doing all its fun first boot Linux stuff. Ignore the Vizio error there that says there's no signal when clearly there's a signal. Thank you, Vizio. Please stop it. All right, so it's completed its initial setup, and now it's booting into Batocera Linux. All right, so it's loaded up, and now we need a way to control it. So we can use the mouse and keyboard still. If I use the keyboard here, I can go back and forth. But nobody really wants to use a keyboard for retro gaming. So Batocera Linux has pretty good support for a number of various controllers that are out there. I've been using a wired Xbox 360 controller, which I have here. So this is just a 360 controller with USB. And so if I plug that into the front of the machine in those high-speed USB 2.0 ports, you can see that it's connected, and now we can use it to navigate through our systems here. So by default, you don't get a whole lot. Batocera Linux, in order to be distributed, can't include anything that would violate copyright, and that would be any of the ROMs that you might want to play. So I'm not condoning copyright violations and theft of intellectual property, but I am saying that what comes with this system isn't super fun to play. We've got some sort of knockoff Kong, which probably violates IP anyway. A 2048 game for the Nintendo, which probably violates some IP anyway. But we've got all these different systems that we can emulate, but no real games. So let's talk about how we're going to get games onto this system. So if I hit the start button on my 360 controller, that brings up the menu. I can go to my network settings, and I can see my IP address. So now what I want to do is go over to my computer, my Windows computer or Mac computer, doesn't matter. I've been doing this on a Mac, but I'll be doing Windows today. And we just need to connect through Windows file sharing to this server. All right, so back on the Windows computer, I just opened up a Windows Explorer shell. In the address bar here, if I type in the IP address of that system, and hit enter, it's asking for credentials. I think we can just type in whatever we want here, admin. And now we see this share. So now we're navigating the file system of the Batocera Linux USB boot drive on the Thin Client that's sitting over here, right there. So the way it manages ROMs is it has different folders for all the different systems that it can emulate. Commodore 64, Commodore 128, Mega Drive, Neo Geo. We want to find, for our example here, the Nintendo Entertainment System. So if we go ahead and open this up, we can see here's the 2048 game, and there's nothing else in here at the moment. So to copy ROMs into this folder, all we need to do is drag and drop the ones we have. Alright, so I've got a legal backup of a cartridge I own, The Legend of Zelda, for Nintendo, which I can just copy right to this ROM share. So now, after copying the game, we need to make one more change, and that is to tell Batocera that we have added this game here. It doesn't seem to have a way to auto-find games that are added, so this gamelist.xml, we need to edit that and tell it about the game we've just added. Alright, so I'm going to open up gamelist.xml in Windows Notepad. And as you can see here, it's got information only currently for this 2048 game. So we need to add a new section in this XML for the new game that we've added. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some script out there that will run through and modify this XML for you, or if there's a way on the system to automatically scan. But this provides a lot of information that you see on the screen. It's got, a video of it. So when you hover over it, it plays a quick video to show what the game looks like. It's got an image, a still, so as a thumbnail, release date, who the developer is, all this other stuff. I don't think we need much of that other than these ones here. So let me copy that, and I'll insert that right after this game tag here. Tab that in, and close that tag. So we just need to provide the path to the ROM here. Legend of Zelda, the.nes, and the name, Legend of Zelda. But let's switch back over to looking at the Thin Client and see if we now see Zelda in our list of games. Alright, so we can close out of network settings, go back to the main menu here, and let's look at Nintendo. And I will go ahead here and select Update Game Lists. So what that does is it just reboots Batocera Linux. And now we see this Legend of Zelda. So I didn't specify a picture. I didn't specify a video. If I hover over 2048, it's going to play a quick video about it. So you can do a lot of really cool things to make this look really fancy if you want, if you have videos, if you have thumbnails, if you have information. But I'm more interested in just playing the game. So I've copied Zelda here. Let's go ahead and start that. So I just hit A on my Xbox 360 USB controller, and that's going to load us into The Legend of Zelda. So now there's one final problem that I haven't talked about yet that we need to address. So right now we are connected through VGA, and I said I wanted to do VGA instead of DVI for a specific reason. And that reason is that the only sound output on this Thin Client is the little headphone jack in the front. This guy right here. There's no headphone in the back. There's no audio present on VGA connections. There's no audio present on DVI connections. Now, a majority of monitors that support VGA have a little headphone jack next to them, and that's to get sound in to go with the VGA port. This Vizio monitor is no exception. So I've got a standard headphone cable plugged in. It's got the same connection on both sides. And if I plug that in here, we now have sound with our awesome retro game emulator. All right, and now we can hear what we're playing. Now, the reason we're not using DVI to do this and then converting that to HDMI is because the DVI signal carries no sound. So you would need to mix the headphone jack in to your digital signal. And there are devices that do that, but they're like $45 or $50 on Amazon. And for a $10 retro gaming console, I didn't want to spend another $50 to get what I can get with VGA and a headphone cord. So let me just do a quick little demo here of Zelda. So the graphics are very smooth. The control is very not laggy at all. You know, on some of these emulators, when you push a button, there can be enough of a delay where it's perceptible. Not at all on this system. You know, the dual core 1 gigahertz APU is more than fast enough to run Nintendo games. So I have had no playability concerns playing Nintendo Entertainment System games on this thin client. All the games I've tried have worked. I'm sure there are some games that are incompatible because that's just how it goes with emulation. Not everything is like the original hardware, but so far I haven't found any. All right, well, let's try emulating a system that's a little bit harder to emulate, that takes a little bit more power, and see how that looks. All right, and for that something more substantial, let's check out PC Engine. But not the standard PC Engine emulator. We have a CD-ROM game from PC Engine we need to play. Lords of Thunder. All right, so here's our PC Engine CD-ROM 2 system. We'll hit start on my 360 controller. And we will start. Start here. Let's go with Fire Armor. And let's just play the game. All right, so this is considerably more complex emulation than the Nintendo. And again, no slowdowns, no lags, everything looks really nice. No input lag whatsoever that I can see. So yeah, I think this little thin client is going to be everything we need for a full retro emulator. So let's pause this game here and put things back together and button it up. Now, one final thought about this. Like I said, I do have this keyboard connected. Now, if you need to change games or change emulators, the only way I found out of them to get out of them so far is to do Alt F4 on the keyboard. There may be some shortcut on the controller itself to do that. I just haven't figured out if that exists or what it is. So I think you wouldn't necessarily need to have the keyboard and mouse hooked up once you have everything set up. You can navigate everything with the 360 controller just fine, except for changing games. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Maybe I'll figure that out at some point and add a comment. But for now, we want to put everything back together, so let's disconnect all of our cables. So we have our USB drive in here, and we've made absolutely no other changes. If for some reason we wanted to go back and make this a real thin client again, well, we still have the original drive. We can pop this in, and it will boot up just like it was before. So the case just kind of fits on the top again, slides down into place, and then we put our 2 screws back in. All right, so for 10 bucks, we have an entire retro gaming console that's on our network. Now, we could, I think, get a mini PCI card out from an old laptop and put that in here, and that probably would get us on Wi-Fi. So I think that's just a mini PCI slot, but I haven't played around with it. I've got wired networks, so not a big deal. But yeah, for 10 bucks plus the USB flash drive I had, plus a 360 controller I had, plus a VGA cable I had, plus an audio cable I had. So, okay, maybe it's a little more than 10 bucks if you don't have this stuff around. If you can find it for 10 bucks, we saw some on eBay for a little bit more, but for me, for this one, $10, a whole retro gaming console, super easy. Thanks for watching. So we have one last piece of business to clean up here. To get the PC Engine or TurboGrafx 16 emulation working, I did have to go out and download this particular file that goes into the BIOS directory, syscard3.pce, with this MD5 checksum. It's pretty easy to find. I just Googled it, and then took me to a GitHub page where I could just download the file directly by clicking View Raw here. So, not all the emulators come fully configured, and a little bit of Googling can get you past any of those problems. So PC Engine 2, the CD-ROM supported PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16, Just needed this BIOS to get everything to work.
Hi guys! Make sure to like and subscribe and watch more of our videos later. Bye!